With the entrance to the zoo more or less completed, Genevieve Joyce, along with the rest of the team at Whispering Woods, is looking forward to livening up the space with some more animals. Or really, the animals that accidentally came with the land. Once an old farm, the few sheep, cows, pigs, and single donkey that remain on the land need a new space within the zoo, and Genevieve plans on a petting zoo. Jonathan Vaughn, the zoo's accountant, isn't too sure about the profits associated with this petting zoo idea, but estimates that the restoration of an old stone barn on the property shouldn't break the bank. Wesley, the zoo's head keeper, is disappointed the animals aren't more exotic, but everyone's gotta start somewhere. Meanwhile, Antonio the mechanic gets down to business researching some rustic pieces that will hopefully give guests a real farmhouse experience, and Imogen, the head vet, begins research on the zoo's newest residents. Welcome back to Whispering Woods Wildlife Haven. Alright friends, by now you know the drill. We're going to sell some butterflies. And then we're going to realize that the only types of butterflies in the butterfly exhibit are monarchs, which means that the other ones died out. So we're going to repurchase the European peacock species and the old world swallowtail species to refill our exhibit with, and mess around with a few of the settings just to make sure that all of the species survive in this exhibit. And also, so that we don't have to use the trade center anymore. I'm just going to be selling them for pure cash, straight from the management, which will possibly result in less money, but I think we're sitting on enough of a lump sum that it shouldn't matter too much. Some changes to our zoo layout. Over here, I've created a plan for where our zoo gift shop will be. And today, we're going to be building in the land right behind it. We're starting off with a European rustic stone wall recolored to the colors of the slate roof, because that's the roof we're going to be putting on it later on, as well as the European shutters in that light green color of the Whispering Woods logo, framed with some Indonesian stained timber in a grayish brown color, kind of. And then here I'm just building some barn doors, so this is Indonesian stained timber basically all around. So there's some panels, there's some beams, and then I think there might be some planks in there. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I researched this theme so early on. It'll be basically a lot of green. I did consider doing red, so if you feel like red would suit this barn better, do let me know in the comments below. But for the most part, it's going to be a lot of grays, cool browns, and greens, which are some of my favorite color combinations. I think they look really natural. A lot of this inspiration came from a bunch of research that I did. And also shout out to Beeve for providing me with so many inspiration images. We just shoot messages back and forth on Discord all the time. And he messaged me a bunch of pictures from the British countryside because he lives in Britain. So it was really nice because I could be a little bit more authentic with this build maybe. And so a lot of these old British barns will be made of dry stone or this kind of European rustic stone, and then have these wooden elements to them with like big hardware, massive hinges. And a lot of them are pretty derelict, like falling apart. I mean, this one won't be because it's been restored by Genevieve, but that was kind of the original idea, is this old barn that was on the land and she is just recovering it for use for the zoo. So now that we've got this first wall built, I actually tried this like 4 or 5 separate times before it finally worked for me, because initially I wanted all of the windows to fit into the walls without being covered up by them. So here you can see me building around the window, and that's originally what I tried to do with all of the windows, and it just wasn't working. And I think I tried it three or four separate times, and I was like, oh, this is just not gonna happen. And I think I rage quit for a couple of hours. This was on Tuesday when the Barnyard Pack first came out. And I spent about 3 hours trying to build. Decided that, hey, this isn't working. Spent about 2 or 3 hours just watching videos on YouTube. And then came back to this and finally managed to put this together. So sometimes if things aren't happening, you just need to take a break. This window here is going to be open, which means that I had to build the stone around it and then make sure that the frames fit in and that the shutters were open, but the other ones we're just gonna double up. They'll be on the front of the building and then they'll be on the inside of the building, which means more money, but I mean, it is challenge mode, but we're still making a bunch of money right now, so I'm not super worried about it. And honestly, if we go bankrupt, that would kind of fit the story, so there's that. You will have to excuse my voice as well. I am kind of losing it. If it feels like it sounds hoarse or something like that, yeah, I've been slowly losing my voice for the last little bit here, so hopefully it doesn't go completely because I have a schedule to keep up with, which if you haven't seen it, it is on my community tab. Make sure you go check it out. We have a lot of exciting videos coming out this month, and I hope you all stick around to watch them. We're going to add another wall to the building. Obviously, a building needs to have at least 3 walls if you want to make it triangular. Usually 4 though, they're usually rectangular. The front doors that we built earlier on will be for guest access, and then these doors will be for access for the animals. And I think I really set out to make a barn that was a little bit more difficult to build in Planet Zoo, which is probably why I had so many issues with it initially. But basically, guests will be able to walk through this barn, and then the animals will all have shelter within it. And we're adding 4 different animals in this episode. Only 3 of them will have access to this shelter, but we do have another shelter built for the last one. So the side doors over there are going to be for the Highland cattle, and that's kind of going to wrap around this main building. And then there will be another offshoot for the sheep and the pigs. Again, I'm usually a sandbox builder, so they do not have enough hard shelter. Hopefully we can get that figured out at one point. Oh, excuse me. And hopefully it doesn't matter too much towards their welfare, because I definitely did not take their plant coverage into account. And again, you can tell I'm a sandbox builder because I decided to frame the entire base of this building with these faux blocks. It just looked really good. I can't help it. I could have used temple stones, I guess, from the South America pack, I believe, but I don't have that researched yet, so faux blocks it is. So here is the secondary building, the offshoot. So the main building, and I'll see if I can put up a inspo picture here. Probably not, because I think it's copyright, but it had a main building that was taller and then a secondary wing that was about a meter and a half shorter. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. And again, I really hate the heights in Planet Zoo because these walls, so the main building is about 5 meters high, and then the secondary building is about 3 meters. And we do not really have pieces in the game that are that size. We have 4 meters, 2 meters, and 1 meter. So they're relatively easy to put together to make these heights. But at the same time, it's also a lot more pieces. It's a lot more money if you're playing a challenge or franchise mode. And it's a lot more breaking groups apart to make sure your pieces aren't fighting, Zed fighting, I mean. Overall, I am really happy with how it turned out. You can tell that one building is on the outside of the grid line, and then the other one is on the inside of the grid line, so I had to be careful with that. I think it looks pretty good, and it looks a lot like the reference picture, which I'm very, very happy with. So here we're building a attic. I don't know what this part of barns is called. It's like the secondary level where usually like hay is stored, or you'll have crates or a bunch of other things. And here I'm trying to make it a little bit more not as patterned, I guess. So I'm trying to use some of the square panels, and then I'm trying to use some of the rectangular panels just to make sure that it doesn't look like it's made up of all the same pieces. And then once we have something I'm happy with, I can just copy that across all the way. This part will be a little bit thicker, and then we're going to reduce it down on the end here because there will be a ladder coming up to this part. And obviously that's not accessible by guests, but it's just for a little bit of flavor. And this was definitely not necessary because, again, this is challenge mode, but I like all these little details. So here we're going to build the beams that are holding this piece up. And this is, again, just Indonesian stained timber, one of my favorite pieces. And then we're going to pop an anchor plate on the end just to make it look like something is holding it to the wall, because that is a lot of load to bear. And that's just going to go across the entirety of the building. And then we're also going to rotate it so it's perpendicular and goes all the way across the long end as well. I do have to say I'm actually really excited to continue Whispering Woods with the Barnyard Pack here because this fits in so well to what I had planned. I had no idea that the Barnyard Pack was coming because I don't have early access or anything like that. It was just completely out of the blue for me, and yeah, as soon as I saw it was announced, I was like, oh, look at this. I just started a series that this is perfect for without having even known it, which is really cool. But also, I hope you believe that I don't actually have early access because it does look really suspicious that I started this series right before the Barnyard Pack. So here are the animals that we're going to put in today, as you probably guessed from the intro. So we have the Hill Radnor sheep, and they can live in pretty large groups of up to 50. More than one male, which is really interesting because a lot of the time these kinds of animals will have only one male allowed in an enclosure. So it's nice that they don't have only one male because there will be a little bit less fighting. So I'm gonna see if I can get about 12 of them in an enclosure. And we're also going to put the lone donkey into this enclosure because they have interspecies enrichment with the sheep. So it'll be really nice to have them in here, and then I won't have to build a separate enclosure for them, even though I totally would. So if you think that our lone donkey, the female Dahlia, should have her own separate enclosure and potentially a male mate, do let me know in the comments because I totally will build her a different enclosure. I just thought it would be fun to have some interspecies enrichment in this one. So this will be the sheep and donkey enclosure right here. Now our second species that we are adding today is going to be the Tamworth pig, and they live in pretty small group sizes. Only about 5 of them in an enclosure is what I'm going to try to do, and only one male. So I'm going to build a decently small enclosure on the other side here. I do make it slightly bigger afterward because they have so many little piglets per litter, and I wasn't expecting the first litter or two to just like completely blow the habitat size out of the water. So it will definitely be bigger than this. It'll kind of go all the way to the edge of where the sheep habitat is, just to match it up. And then the last species that we're introducing in this episode is the Highland cattle, or the Highland coo. So these cows, they're a long-haired variety of cow with some pretty big horns. And I don't know if they would actually be too great for a walkthrough enclosure. I'd be a little bit hesitant that they would charge someone. So I'm gonna make this one not a walkthrough enclosure or the new petting mechanic that we have. And it's just going to run along the side of the sheep enclosure but also around the back of the building so that it joins up with the pig enclosure. And over here on the left, you can see the bathroom that we built last time. Also, a little bit of a marker for another thing that we'll be adding to the zoo. So if you think you know what I'll be building there, make sure to leave your guess in the comments. It's kind of gonna make a backdrop for the Highland cattle. I'm very excited to build it, but unfortunately I still have to research it, so it's not high on the priority list. The animals are a lot more high priority, as are the different themes, such as the new rustic theme. But I'm very excited to add something in that empty space between the plaza and the Highland cattle, and I think you will also have a lot of fun with it. If you think you know what it is, do let me know. So this is our layout for our 3 enclosures. We're going to try to get them into that building, and then also a pathway for the guests in between so that they can walk through the barn to see the shelters for the animals, and then also have a view from the outside, and for the pigs and the sheep be able to walk into the enclosures. Lots of guest viewing opportunities in this build. Here we are just going to add the slate roof, which is what I matched the European rustic stone colors to. And I decided that the eaves weren't quite far out enough, so here I am adding some more. And again, we're gonna have to take that off the grid in order to line it up properly. And then this one over here, to avoid the Zed fighting, is going to be another separate group, unfortunately. And then again, we can't copy more than one group at a time, so we're gonna have to do those separately. But hey, the end product is worth it in my opinion. Over here, same thing, we're just going to make sure that the lower part of the building also has a nice roof. And then we're going to plug up any holes with some more rustic stone. Here I'm just making this a separate group so I can slide it out. And then here I'm going to move the rustic stone. Lots of manipulating the grid with this one, and making sure that it's on the 2-meter variant rather than the 4-meter, because otherwise these pieces definitely wouldn't fit in here. But once you know how to work the grid, it is actually pretty intuitive. It's just learning how to do it initially is very, very difficult. Here I'm going to make some beams for the roof to make it look like it's supported by something. Lots of Indonesian stained timber once more. These poles will eventually be shorter so they're not sticking through the roof. And then we're going to get these beams right underneath the shingles to line up with them to make it look like something is supporting this like super old roof that had to be redone because it had basically collapsed. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'll last this whole video. This is actually a pretty long video, so if you stick the whole thing out, I am very, very grateful. So yeah, we'll just slide that up, and there we go. These are the new metal fences from the Barnyard Pack. I am a very big fan of these. I am so happy that I don't have to build something like this on my own anymore, because now it's a single piece. Or if you really need it to be, you can make it a few different pieces. So I have the metal gate on the end, and then we're gonna recolor that to a gray color so that it kind of matches the building, kind of not. And we are going to be making 3 different fences for each species in here. So this is for the Highland cattle. I thought this fence worked the best for it. And yeah, it fit in really nicely. We're just going to end up sliding a gate into there so that the animals can be delivered. And then here, I thought I might use the new rustic gate, but I wasn't too sure about it. So I ended up just building my own with, again, Indonesian stained timber, because why would I use anything else, apparently? And this is just going to be a very basic, like, not picket fence, but I want to say barn fence. I'm just going to build it up against these metal fences to make sure that it's the right height. Just a big square pole on the end. and then 3 separate horizontal beams to make sure that the sheep can get through. And I did end up adding a little bit of detailing to it with a hinge at the top. I initially tried doing it on every post, but it looked like a little bit too much. And then I ended up just doing it on the top one. So I think that's a pretty basic fence. Nothing fancy. Pretty easy to put in. It's the same color as the trim on the building, so it fits in really nicely. And then I'm just gonna make all of that the same group so that it's a little bit easier to deal with. And I can just slide it across. It doesn't quite meet up with the wall, so I'm going to slide that in. And then that actually works out really well for our ladder access here, because right now it's kind of cutting into it. And if I move this over, which was very difficult to grab that piece, then I can slide that over, and then the ladder is also going to slide over. And then we'll have some access to that little attic portion, pretend access. Here is the pig fence. So again, I'm just lining it up with the existing fences to make sure it's the right height. And this is one of the base game fences, I want to say, New World maybe, or Aquatic Pack. I don't know for sure. And again, the Indonesian stained timber. So I'm just sliding those over. Here, I couldn't get it to match up, so I just thought I'd put a barrel down as a blockade, almost. But also as some decor. I thought it looked pretty good. So I have to say, the props in this pack, I absolutely love them. These crates are amazing. The barrels are really, really great. The straw is amazing as well. And these are all pieces that we've been building since basically the beginning of the game, because they didn't exist. So if you look at items on the workshop, you can find barrels. I think just Goran has a beautiful barrel on there. And then crates, and there's definitely straw and like hay bales on the workshop as well. So these are all things that we've been wanting for such a long time, that people have been building out of other pieces and putting on the workshop. So it's really, really nice to finally have these pieces in the game as a single piece rather than an amalgamation of like 50 different pieces, because piece count definitely has a big influence on how your game runs. It's preferable to have something as a one piece rather than something that is a group of 50 pieces. I was just planning on maybe putting a floor in, but then I decided that what better way than just having like a old dirt floor in this barn, because I mean it's being restored, so it doesn't really matter. Maybe the floor originally was wooden and it rotted away, so the zoo just decided to take it out. That would make sense. So it's now just a dirt floor, and we'll add some hay on the bottom for the animals afterwards. The one thing I really don't like about challenge mode is that I can't just change the time, so I have no idea what this lighting is gonna look like. But I figured we should probably have lighting in this old barn, and this was probably retrofitted because maybe this barn was built at a time where there were just lanterns. You would use candles to light the interior. Yeah, I don't know. They probably would have to run cables over these beams in order to get these lights to work, which fits the vibe. Alright, time to put some animals in. So here we're putting our habitat barriers in, and this is going to be the sheep enclosure first. The sheep are probably the animal I am the most excited to build for, which is why we're doing this one first. And we're going to slide one of the new guest gates in here at the back. I am a little bit, not annoyed, but a little bit miffed that you still need to put a keeper gate in as well, which I guess is the same thing as the walk through habitats, but I just don't understand why you need a guest gate and a separate zookeeper gate. Like, why can't the zookeepers also use the guest gate? I don't understand. It would make it so much easier. But anyway, these faux rock walls were in the trailer, and they are not a single piece. They are a blueprint. So you can grab these on your own. They are part of the update, or these ones were off of the workshop by Anders Salamanders. Highly recommend checking out his channel. Lovely videos, love him. And he separated the walls from the blueprint so that you could use them even if you don't have the Barnyard pack. You just need the aquatic pack with the faux rocks. So if you want to use those walls, make sure to check out his workshop. I will link it down below. Here I'm just filling the interior with some straw or hay. I think it's straw. I don't know the difference. I should. But anyway, we're gonna get our vet to start researching the sheep so that we have some enrichment items. And then we're going to take care of some guest stuff. So we're going to hide the ugly, very ugly donation bins with some barrels. So it looks like people are just throwing money into them. Sounds kind of fun. And again, like all of these props, like the barrels, this metal trough, I cannot wait to use this in ways that it was not intended to be used. These crates are super cool. Haven't used the vegetables yet, but probably in an episode coming up soon. And just making sure that we're adding some greenery outside. We want to bring the enclosure out to the guests. That's part of exhibit design. We want to make sure that guests are immersed even if they're not in the enclosure. That will make them hopefully want to enter the enclosure. And then we're gonna hop over to the cattle enclosure. So this is just the end of the fencing because we're using the same fencing as the interior, so probably don't need to show you all of that. We're gonna place down some feeding items. Maybe some enrichment items if we have them unlocked. A lot of the cattle enrichment items are very similar to the sheep, so it's nice because you only need to have one of them researched to get access to a lot of things that both of them use. And then again, just throwing down some hay so that they have somewhere to sleep. And then we're going to build up this wall on the side of the cattle enclosure because I realized that people were standing on that path leading into the petting zoo and just staring into the cattle enclosure, even though that's the worst place to see them from. So I doubled up this wall, made it a little bit taller, and then happy little accident, thank you Bob Ross, there's a little kind of V-shaped cutout in there, which is something you would definitely see in a wall like that. It's just the rock crumbled away, and honestly I think it looks really good. And then the wall kind of crumbles away and into the metal piece on the end, which I think looks really, really good. So here we're going to add the pig enclosure. Again, different fences, the same ones as on the inside. Yeah, just wood, recolored to match that gate. I don't like that it's not flexi-color. Kind of sucks. I mean, okay, I love the new gate, but I would love it more if you could change the color of it, because it feels kind of like a step backward to not make it flexi color. I feel like a lot of the more recent packs were more flexi color items, and this one was not. So I do wish a lot of the items were flexi color, even though I do love the items as they are. I think they are a very beautiful color, but they would be better if they were flexi color. There's the caveat there. Anyway, the pig enclosure is going to line up with the cow enclosure on the end here. And again, couldn't get it to match up, so I just put down a barrel. We're gonna put some nettle on top. We're gonna make it a little piece for guest immersion. And then we're gonna do a little time skip to make sure that we have all the research done. So as it rains in the British countryside, we are also going to hire some more staff because Wesley is not doing well on his own, so we need to hire a new keeper. And we're gonna set up some work zones. zones. So we have the petting zoo is going to be one work zone, and we do have the staff area quite far away, so we will be adding a keeper hut and a power source over near the sheep, sinking that down into the ground as well. We'll probably see that in the cinematics. I don't think I'm going to record actually building it. And then we're going to make the entrance plaza a separate work zone, including all those staff buildings once more, plus the butterfly exhibit. So not very much going on just yet. I think the petting zoo is going to be a pretty big zone. It's going to have 6 or 7 habitats in it. So it will probably need at least 2 keepers and like a designated vet and probably a designated caretaker or 2. Probably a designated mechanic as well, but we'll think about that when we get there. For now, we have a pretty limited staff, though they are all pretty trained up just for story purposes. So Imogen and Antonio are at 5 stars, or by the end of the episode, they are at 5 stars. Wesley is at 4 stars just for story purposes because he is still fresh out of school. And then our newest hires are still being trained up, but that is because we can't train them immediately in the game, so there's that. Finally, we're going to use some of the new hand sanitizing stations to make this an interactive walkthrough. And I'm going to place these on the posts just so that people can interact with it and then hopefully pet the sheep and the donkey once it's in here. We also got our first inspection report and our education score was miserable, which made me really, really sad, but you know, we still got time to fix that. And here's that little cutout in the Highland kettle wall that I was talking about. I am a very big fan of this. It is so, so cute. We needed to do a little bit more research. So enjoy this little time lapse of our Highland cattle through the wall. And we're finally onto the planting. I did this 3 separate times because the first time I didn't record. The second time I didn't like it because I was trying to adhere to the plant coverage needs of the animals. And then the third time is what you're seeing right now because I decided screw the percentages and I'm just gonna make it look pretty and I don't care if the animals are happy or not. So we're gonna add the enrichment items first to make sure that they can fit in here. We have the pine scratching tree thing, the rubbing pillar, and then the hanging grazer. And then we're just gonna throw down a bunch of aquatic rocks recolored to the temperate biome. I thought it fit the best alongside the building colors. And after that, a lot of this is just going to be buffalo grass. And the new hedgerows, I do really like those. They're a very nice green color and they fit really, really well along the faux stone walls. But I also placed a few trees, so mostly beech trees and ash trees, if I'm remembering correctly, and cypress trees as well, because those are what we have on the Europe map, so I just kind of wanted to match that biome. And sycamore maples, I think, is the other tree that we have on this map. And then in addition to that, oh, so here we have the hedgerows. I'm really, really big fan of these. I tried to make them stick out on both sides, but some placements were hit or miss. And then we're also going to buff this up with some saltwort bushes. The only thing with saltwort is that they're not traversable. They have a pretty big hitbox, unfortunately. I do really love the look of them, but they're a little bit difficult to work with if you're trying to make sure that animals can actually traverse as much of their habitat as possible. The hedgerows as well have a hitbox, so they are not traversable, unfortunately. And if you want to know which foliage is traversable prior to the Barnyard DLC, do check out the video that I've linked in the top corner right now. So after the saltwort, I'm also going to add some nettles because I love nettles and they fit into the British countryside so well. Then just a bunch of buffalo grass, just spamming it all over the place. We're gonna use the regular as well as a little bit of the dry to add some color. And here I decided, hey, maybe I should, you know, have a few little hills in the enclosure for the hill Radnor sheep. That would check out. That would make a lot of sense, I think. So before I managed to get the buffalo grass in, I decided to do that because once you get the grass in, I was trying to align it to the surface so that it looked a little bit more natural, but we'll see how that turns out. And then off camera, because I totally forgot about them, and I don't know how I forgot about them, I ended up adding some more creosote bushes as well. And like, how did I forget about creosote bushes? They're basically the most used plant in Planet Zoo by a bunch of people, other than buffalo grass. Yeah, I'm not sure how I did that, but you will see in the cinematics some creosote bushes hanging around in the background as well. I also ended up adding some rock piles, and they are a blueprint by Caesar Creates. Amazing blueprint. It will be linked in my workshop collection down below. Highly recommend. Here we are finally getting started on the Highland cattle enclosure. Here are those rock piles I was just talking about. They're a combination of rocks and the buffalo grass, so that worked perfectly for what I was going for. And then we're gonna add some of the same trees, so beech trees, ash trees, and so on. I wanted the Highland cattle enclosure to be more like a meadow, more flowery. And the thing with these animals, so both the Highland cattle and the Hill Radnor sheep, they can eat very hardy plants, which means that they can basically survive off anything. They're just like gonna graze on anything, really. So the fact that they have pretty lush enclosures is maybe not realistic, but at the same time, if the zoo is feeding them properly, then they shouldn't be eating all of the other stuff in their enclosure. So yeah, that's just the explanation I'm gonna go with. So I ended up putting some buttercups, some asters, and some ox-eye daisies and Yorkshire foggrass in with that buffalo grass to make it look a little bit more meadow-like and different from the Hill Radnor sheep enclosure. The pig enclosure is going to be even more different. It's just a bunch of soil and sand. There's not a lot going on here. There's some planters to add color, and then the rest of it is very brown and drab, which I think suits the pigs pretty well. We are going to move that feeder over so that we can get the mud bath in. The mud bath, by the way, is not properly tagged at the moment, so if you search for enrichment by Tamworth Pig, it won't pop up. So make sure that you do just search for the mud bath, because otherwise it won't show up. Again, having some issues with the terrain collision. I couldn't bring it up around the enrichment item, so I kind of ended up putting a path down underneath it and sinking it down. And then I remembered that we have broken trees and logs and such in Planet Zoo, and that would be a great addition to all of these enclosures. So then I ended up adding those not only to this enclosure, but also to the other ones to beef them up a little bit. That was not an intended pun either. Sorry. So that is it for today, and on this snowy morning, here are our sheep. And as the snow melts, it does begin to rain, as it so often does in England. We have a few glimpses of our old barn with our cattle, our sheep, and our pigs. I still can't decide which animals I think are the cutest. I love all of them. In the background, you can see the donkey shelter I built off camera. And here is Dahlia, our single donkey. So if you think she should have a friend, do let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye.